We are back and ready to roll for episode number 34 of the Shutdown Inning podcast. Steven Rissotto here with Tylor Hall as always. Tyler, it is the fall classic time. It's the fall. We're ready for some baseball in the World Series. What's going on? How you doing?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, we made it, man. The World Series, what we all wait to see this time of year. And I think we've got a pretty interesting matchup to talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's not maybe the matchup that we originally thought, but anytime the World Series comes around and they do a lot of the ceremonies and just the what it means to be in the World Series, I think means a lot to a lot of these teams. But and also like the other part of it is like you brought up this last podcast, but there's been a lot of like on this day in histories that come up like on social media the last few days, and they're always fun.
Yeah,
I think one of them I saw the other day was Sandoval's 3 home runs in game one against Verlander.
yeah,
There's a bunch of them that pop up, so it's a good time of year, I think.
yeah. It's always fun, looking back at fun times that you may have had with your team or just memories that you remember, and then seeing some new memories being made right before our eyes that people are going to remember for a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. And you mentioned the matchup, and before we kind of dive deep into the matchup, um, there is some business to go over, kind of to catch everybody up to speed on what went down in the championship series. We mentioned the two matchups. Let's touch on the National League side first. The Diamondbacks ended up going to a game 7 with the Phillies, and in Citizens Bank Park, not an easy place to clinch. The Arizona Diamondbacks do so. They beat the Phillies, the two wild card teams, and the latter wild card team that had the lowest win total out of the two ended up moving on, and it is like a classic Cinderella story. So, I mean, this was a good series, I think. A lot of doubt from Arizona. We're gonna get to that, in the very soon. But what did you think about this series?
I thought it was pretty funny that you and I got it completely wrong. We said that they had to win all the games that Gallen and Merrill Kelly started, and I think they only won one of those games. I think they lost both that Gallen started, was able to squeak out one that Kelly started, and the rest of the starters in the bullpen and the bats kind of was able to make up for that. And I didn't see that coming. I think I said the Phillies were going to win in five. Just and after the first two games, I thought that was definitely the case. And they just they stuck with it. They showed how scrappy they are. I think I saw earlier today at the beginning of the year they were 65-1 odds to win the National League pennant. So congratulations to anyone who put money down on that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, like you said, 84 wins, and now they're playing for the World Series.
It's pretty incredible. And just from the Phillies' point of view, like Tyler and I were talking about it before we hopped on, and like Nick Castellanos like had an incredible division series and wild card series, and it just didn't happen for him in the championship series. And Bryce was still effective, but there's just some missing parts for the Phillies. And for them, they're kind of a World Series or bust team, and I know it's saying a lot, being that they were the wild card team, but I think they are the wild card team where you can honestly say they're built for the World Series. They're built for this stage. And I think for them not to get there, a lot of people say, oh, well, for let's use an example, the Brewers, for the Brewers not to get to the World Series, maybe it wasn't expected of them. But for a team like the Phillies who have all these stars and, a lot of money
Yeah.
committed to them, it feels weird not seeing them there because I think everybody kind of expected it. So,
Yeah. I mean, did you definitely? I mean, when you put a roster like that together, with a couple great arms up front, and then I mean, they had Castellanos even in the division series hitting like seventh. I mean, when you have a lineup where that guy's hitting seventh, you have one goal, and that's to win the World Series. And they just when it mattered most, all the bats kind of went quiet. The Phillies only scored 3 runs at home in games 6 and 7 combined, and that's tough to eke out the wins in October with that kind of production.
yeah, and no knock on the Diamondbacks. I think, although I do think that this is more of like, the Phillies kind of collapsing, the Diamondbacks deserve a lot of credit. They played really good, and Corbin Carroll's amazing. I think he went 3 for 4 in game 7.
Yeah,
And
like two steals, 2 RBIs, 2 runs. He did it all last night.
yeah, he stole one earlier in the game against Ranger Suarez, and then a little later against a reliever. And like he just there was no chance of throwing him out, like no chance.
Yeah.
He could have stole third both times too. But I mean, this is where we're going to see Corbin Carroll kind of emerge on the big stage in my mind. But it's the first time the Diamondbacks are division are National League champions since 2001. So this is my first time ever seeing them in the World Series. So I feel like once a show I do this to you.
Oh man, that makes me feel so old. I was I just wrapped up my junior year in high school when they played in the World Series last. But yeah, excited to see them back. Ketel Marte obviously had a great series as well, winning the NLCS MVP. I think it's 16 games now, his hit streak to start his postseason career. So, you got to get hot at the right time, and the D-backs are putting up a solid effort across the board right now. I mean, we'll talk about their bullpen in a little bit, but their bullpen was probably the savior of the series for them
Yeah, no,
in a
I
lot of
agree.
aspects.
I agree. And they struggled a little bit with some of their starting pitching, but um I don't know if I expect that from Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly again. I mean, and they have another guy. I don't know how to say his name. Brandon Fat. I'm just gonna call him Fat for the sake of this podcast. We're gonna go with Fat. Brandon Fat looked really good in kind of his limited time, and he did exactly what they asked him to do because they don't really have a third starter. And I
Yeah.
keep saying this over and over again, like Jordan Montgomery, who they're going to face in the World Series, is like would have been a great fit for this Diamondbacks team, and they never got a pitcher. Maybe there wasn't one out there that they could have gotten. But yeah, first time since '01, and knocking out the Phillies. I mean, it's an all wild card World Series that we're going to see because we're going to touch on the other series. Shall we get into that one? That one's
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like we were more
But
locked. I was more locked into this one. And I think for the first time in a while, it's the first time that I was more locked into an American League Championship series than a National League Championship series. What about you? Which one were you kind of locked in on?
I was more locked into the NLCS, partially
Oh,
just because how the game, how partially just how the schedule landed. I was able to catch quite a bit more of it. I always track all the games this time of year, so I kind of have an idea what's going on. But I'm kind of a National League guy at heart anyway, and I have a really good buddy. Shout out to Hal, who's a lifelong Diamondbacks fan, and so he's excited as well. So I was kind of keeping his kind of living vicariously through him as well. But I mean, this ALCS was a great matchup as well. Obviously, we talked about it last week, the battle of former Giants managers. But you were the one most invested in. What do you want to throw out there on it?
yeah, no, I think the managers was the biggest story, of the series. Both these guys, old school managers, right? But also are with teams that utilize some of the newer stuff. And I think it's fascinating watching them try and combine it. Especially Dusty, who has had, not public, from, he doesn't want it to go public, but there's been leaked information that he does not necessarily agree with a lot of the analytic team with Houston. And like, I understand, like, there's a certain aspect to it where you can't teach an old dog new tricks or whatnot, but still watching him kind of go through the motions, and Bochy the same thing. Like, these guys could still work a bullpen pretty good, even though things have changed in baseball with the 3 batter minimum. And so many people in their ear with decision making, they still know how to manage a bullpen pretty well. And from the Texas point of view, they hit. Like, we saw this in the regular
Oh, yeah.
season. Like, I think they scored more than 10 runs, like, so much in the first half. And they like fought to get into the postseason that last week, and all they do is hit. Their offense is insanely deep. They have a pretty good bench. They have Evan Carter, who is a young player like my age, 21 years old, who could be thrown in the lineup, who could come off the bench and play defense at the end of the games and put up a good at bat. Like, they're just so deep. They have so much power, and their pitching has done really well too. Their bullpen, I'm concerned about quite a bit. They don't have anybody there that you could trust other than I think I'm not saying his name right. Zabors, something like that. Josh, the right-hander. And he's got big outs for them, and so has Leclerc, who's the longest tenured Ranger, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, this series it had a lot of drama, especially game 5, which I want to get to the drama in just a little bit. But I enjoyed watching these two guys square off. It was a fun time. Some blowout games there too. I think one of the ones, Adolis Garcia hit the grand slam to clinch, um, in the later innings there, and it ended up being, being the end of that. But overall, some good games. Game 5, the one that stands out.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a few times that this is the time of year where it seems like a guy or two becomes a household name where you might not have known who he was before. And holy hell, what a series Adolis Garcia had. I
Yeah.
mean, people say, he had the bat flip, which I'm sure you're going to get to, that kind of irked the Astros, and they said that he did the worst thing possible by waking up the Astros. But he just kept hitting. I mean, he didn't stop, and it'll be interesting to see if he can carry that over, or what kind of adjustments to the approach the Astros took. What will the Diamondbacks do differently to try to neutralize him? Because right now he's the hottest bat on the planet.
Yeah, and for Houston's point of view, like they fought to get into the postseason, and like I feel like Jose Altuve has kind of gone underappreciated throughout his career, and I
Is
know,
that a short joke?
yes, no, kind of, I guess now looking back, hindsight, um, and I know people out there are gonna like go, Steven, what are you talking about, the cheating scandal and all that, like cheating scandal aside, and I know it is hard to put that aside. He just goes out there and play like he's so he like second base, like you don't even need to worry about it. He's such a stabilizing presence in that batting order. And he had some big hits too, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. This Astros team is not as good as it once was. um the bench is kind of spotty a little bit. You could point out some things with different aspects of their lineup, and you could see how it kind of went, obviously, but still, I think overall, I mean, this was a series full of two teams that came to play, and two managers that badly wanted to beat one another because of the respect that they have for one another. But no, yeah, Garcia was just amazing. And like I don't see any reason why it wouldn't carry over into the World Series. He's done a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just glad that both series went 7. We talked the last episode about how we needed some entertaining baseball, some deep series, and the championship series delivered.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
but I do agree to an extent that Altuve is just kind of overlooked a little bit now, just because he's been so good for so long. And I think people just need to get over the cheating scandal. To be honest, at this
Yeah.
point, this that was
Nobody's there from it. Like Altuve's the only one. Verlander, I guess, if you want to count him, sure, but he
Bregman.
pitched. Bregman was there too. So there's a few guys that are left, but for the
But
most
also,
part,
like,
it's a
I feel
different
like
team.
they also weren't the only team cheating. It was widely reported there were many other playoff
Yeah.
teams that were using some kind of sign relaying. I think it was just kind of almost like Barry being held out of the Hall of Fame. He was just the best at it, so he got punished. And the Astros are kind of in that boat now too. I mean, I think both of at least two of the teams they beat that year were kind of listed as potentially, allegedly using some sign stealing as well. So, I mean, it is what it is at this point. Are you gonna just gripe over it for the rest of your life? If that's your choice, like, sorry.
Yeah. I guess at this point, it's more of it's more of like a kind of fun to hate them type of thing than
Yeah.
maybe an actual hatred. And at the same time, like, I mean, yeah, some of those guys are there, but there's other guys that get like Kyle Tucker. And by the way, Kyle Tucker did not have a great postseason, and the broadcast was describing him as a ticking time bomb, who's ready to explode, and he never exploded in the postseason with any big moment at the plate. And by the way, Yordan Alvarez, even like it didn't even matter what the score was. Every single time that Yordan Alvarez steps up to the plate in the postseason is like he's must see TV in my mind.
Oh yeah.
He's
Yeah. He's
must
just fun.
he's just got an incredible presence as a left-handed hitter up there. Like every time like the stage is set and Smoltz is talking about how to get him out, it's just like it's must see TV. Like they're like you stop everything when he comes up to the plate in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. He's so fun to watch. I mean, and like you said, his presence, like he just looks like he's about to go yard. He's just really fun to watch in October. And I'm always looking forward to his bats as well.
Yeah, he took an 0-2 pitch. They tried to like it was 0-2 and they tried to go like really extended with the fastball, like just to see if he could chase. Um and like it was a good 0-2 pitch, one of the ones that like maybe a guy spits on and you set him up for something else. And like he just like threw his bat head out there, kind of like flipped it, and it hit off the top of the Crawford boxes, and he ended up getting a double out of it. It's like Jesus Christ, this guy, you can't get him out. But he's special to watch, very special to watch. And we saw some former Giant. I know we have Giant listeners, of course. Mauricio Dubon ended up getting not moving on. That rhymed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dubon not going on.
Dubon not going on. And
Hey,
then
but I mean, shout out to Mauricio for being nominated for 2 Gold Gloves
yeah,
somehow.
I don't know how that works. I feel like it shouldn't be the case, but and like one of them he didn't even play. Like what was
He started 66 games at second base and got nominated for Gold Glove at second.
I mean, we might have to do a whole show on the Gold Glove because that seems like it's a little tedious, but
I know we're getting off on a little tangent really quick, but also Nolan Arenado not nominated for the first time in his career. He's won it 10 years in a row. Every year he's been in Major League Baseball, he's won the Gold Glove, and he's not even nominated this year.
that is weird. That's very weird. Because he's just a guy that you would expect it, right? This would have been 10 straight, right?
I think he has 10 straight.
Okay, he has 10 straight. Yeah, because I know he came up in 13. And I know this because of his rookie card. I'm imagining it. It's somewhere in my house. But it was probably like 9 or 10 straight, but that reign is over. So time for a new one. But should we give a hats off to oh, do you have the number?
It was 10.
10. Okay. Shout out to Nolan. And shout out to a legend, one of the greatest managers to ever put on a uniform. One of the greatest baseball people probably you'll ever come across. Had a lengthy MLB career, very successful, full of a lot of big and meaningful moments that he was a part of. And then, of course, the teams that he managed. Dusty Baker, after 20 plus years of managing, he's got over 2,000 wins. He's definitely destined for the Hall of Fame. He's got a championship. He announced to USA Today that he is going to retire. And he is, well, I guess already retired. And his career is coming to an end here. And he wants to stay in baseball in some capacity. But we got this right before we came on. I guess yesterday there was kind of rumblings that he was telling people that he was probably going to be done. And then today, before we started recording, we saw the news from Bob Nightingale that Dusty is hanging him up for good. What is your instant reaction? Because I know that you probably have more of like a baseball connection to Dusty because you've been around a while.
Because I've been around a while.
Because you've been around a while.
Back in my day. No, I mean, the first Giants manager I remember is Roger Craig, but very briefly. And so I grew up with Dusty Baker as the manager of the Giants. Got to meet him a couple times, just the nicest guy. He's a Sacramento product as well. And, like you said, he got up to, I just pulled it up, 2,183 wins. 540 career winning percentage, did get that World Series ring, which I'm really happy for him that he did. And 7th all time. He'll probably end up getting passed by Boch either late next year or early in 2025, as long as Bochy plays out his contract, which I'm sure he will. But, like you said, baseball through and through, that's been his life. And he's, I was surprised when he kind of came back to manage the Astros just because of his age, and he's already accomplished so much, and he got to top it off with that World Series last year. So, excited for him to be able to kind of go out on his own terms, accomplishing basically everything you can. And he'll have a date in Cooperstown soon.
Yeah, very happy that he got that championship. Like very happy that he got that championship last year. That was actually shutdown inning is about a year old right now, I think. So shout out to us.
Yeah, we're just over a year. It was the Christian McCaffrey trade. We decided to announce we were starting a podcast, and then the Niners had to trade for Christian McCaffrey that night.
And the reason that ties into Dusty is because, like, I think in our earlier thumbnails on the YouTube side of it, I think I put Dusty a few times, and we talked a lot about that being his first. And just the stops along the way. Like there is some kind of like shaky moments in his managerial career, but for the most part, I think he'll be remembered by his significance in terms of being a player's manager, somebody that players like to look at in terms of being stable and being a cool cat, right? Dusty's a cool cat, but
The wristbands. I started wearing wristbands as a little kid because of Dusty when I played.
yeah, the
Yeah.
wristbands too. Yeah, and the of course the Darren Baker incident with JT Snow at the plate. We think about that, and we think about unfortunately we think about some of the collapses, right? In 2002, I think there was one in '03 with the Steve Bartman play with the Cubs when he was managing there. And you
Yeah.
could say what you want about, maybe his impact on Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor's career, but for the most part I think he'll be remembered favorably. And he had some really good stops along the way. I think he was good in Cincinnati, he was good in Chicago, good in Washington, his short stint there, and then he became kind of the guy to get the Astros out of the mess, the transitional manager. And he stayed on, I think, more than any of us expected him to.
Yeah, for sure. He kind of got them through the mess and then took them even further than that. And really quick, I mean, I think people just kind of overlook because it's been so long since he played. He had a hell of a playing career too. He's obviously going to go in just
Yep.
as a manager, but 37 career WAR, got a Gold Glove, a couple All-Star appearances, won a World Series as a player as well, NLCS MVP, and three-time Manager of the Year. So, I mean, he's had quite the baseball life dream that a lot of people would love to accomplish, even a fraction of what he did in the game of baseball.
And he was on deck during one of the most significant moments in the history of baseball. 7:15 when Hank Aaron hit the 715th home run off Al Downing. He was on deck. So
He had a hell of a seat.
he did have a great seat. That's incredible that he was on deck. And you know what? Like I would not think that he was 74 years old. Like he's a guy that looks like he's probably in his 60s, right? Not he does
Yeah.
not look like he's 74. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um
So, like you said, hats off to Dusty, man.
yeah, and he's done on the field, but I do not think that he's done in baseball. We're gonna see him probably as an ambassador. Like he said, he wanted to be a special assistant. I bet Houston's gonna announce tomorrow that he's gonna accept a role, um, somewhere. But
So now we have a new managerial opening too.
yeah, exactly. And I wonder
A
how they
pretty
fill
good
that.
one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say Joe Espada probably is the front runner, their bench coach who interviewed for the
Yeah.
Giants role. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. But I had a thought and I lost it. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised too if he ends up being like a studio analyst for even if it's just
Yeah,
like the playoffs or something. He's
yeah,
really well spoken and people, he has a lot of credibility with what he says. So
yeah. If he does do it, if he does come home and maybe takes a job with the Giants, and he could be on the pre and post game, that would be a him and Wotus. We need him and friend of the show Ron Wotus on there. That'd be great. Reunited.
the Dusty and Woe show.
That I would listen 100%. Like
Oh,
that would be
absolutely.
amazing. And another quick note on Dusty before we move off the topic and get to kind of the World Series. Um, Will Clark was talking about how something that not a lot of people know is during that dust up with the Cardinals, where Will Clark like got stepped on by what is it, Jose Oquendo and Ozzie Smith,
Yeah.
and that fight went down. Dusty Baker, who was then the hitting coach, was the first guy there. To kind of take part in that brouhaha, right? And then Candy Maldonado, I think, got in there too. But so that's another note on Dusty, very loyal to his players and personnel.
Yeah.
Shout out. Anyhow, Dusty's not going to the World Series. Bruce Bochy is. His Rangers will face off against the Diamondbacks, like we just mentioned. Texas is going to their first fall classic since 2011. And at that point, that was their second straight. They lost to the Giants in 2010. And then, like, probably even more heartbreakingly, lost to the Cardinals in 2011 in an all-time classic series that went 7. And they were so close. They were an out away.
They were about a foot away from that ball being caught in right in game 6.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, and there is, and I heard Mike Krukow say this on the radio this morning, there's an added significance to this because they've never won one. Like, I feel like we root for the underdog, not just like how the team's set up now, but historically, we want to see a team and a fan base win their first championship. And for Texas Ranger fans, it's been a long time at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's been forever. So, so yeah, I mean, it would be great. I mean, I just remember, I'm sure you do too, the first time you saw your team win a World Series, and there's, people even older than me, Steven, that are Rangers fans that haven't got to see their team win.
That's
So,
possible. No, you're not that old.
but yeah, so the Fall Classic starts on Friday, so the teams will get a little bit of rest here. Been some debate this postseason on if that's a good thing or not, but at least both teams have to go through it. But
Yeah,
what
yeah.
what are you thinking here? Do you I saw you had on the, do you think this is a boring matchup?
No, and the reason kind of I put that in our notes here is because Nate Silver of 538, who is a big baseball guy, he does a lot of the political election stuff too. But I think his original thing was baseball. But he said that it was kind of like the least intriguing matchup that he's ever remembered being a baseball fan, in terms of like most boring or whatever. Um, and to be honest, I don't think so. I think, is it boring just because we don't have a like freaking New York or Philly team in there or LA team in there? Like, get out of here. That's stupid. Come on. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, for me, like, are a lot of the players unknown? Yes. But is this an opportunity to change that and promote maybe some new markets and some new teams and some new locations? Like, why do we have such an
yeah.
issue with that? Why does it have to be the Dodgers and the Yankees every year? Like, I hate the idea that just because it's a big market means it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. And I had the same thought as you, as yeah, a lot of people might not know a good number of the players that are going to be playing in the series, but you know what? In a week and a half, they will one way or another. So, if anything, it'll help grow the game more, that it's not okay, here's two teams of rosters we know, and we know who all these guys are, and we'll watch them play in another series. Now, Corbin Carroll, Cattell Marte, uh, Garcia, all these guys from both teams. People probably already know Seager and Semien, but you know, they've kind of flown under the radar a little bit since they went down to Texas too. So, if anything, I think it can be a benefit to the game. It's just a matter of people tuning in, and if you're a baseball fan, you should be.
Yeah, and Zach Gallen too. Like Zach Gallen and a guy like him who has been regarded as one of the best pitchers in the NL for the last few years, but now like a lot of the casual fans are going to get to see it. And even a guy like, Gabby Moreno, who was traded from the Blue Jays. Shout out to Chris Corbett, our good friend Chris from up north. And Chris said that the Blue Jays should never traded him because Gabby Moreno, like he's possibly going to win a Gold Glove in the National League behind the plate. He's one of the best defensive catchers in the game, along with Patrick Bailey with the Giants. And Perdomo, the shortstop, like he's regarded as one of the most underrated guys in the NL. And there's a lot of people that are high on him. There's, and then you look at the outfield, like we as people that watch NL West a lot and watch a lot of Giants stuff, like I don't know if I personally, I'm sure you might be able to attest to this, have seen an outfield defense like the Arizona Diamondbacks. Like I'd
Oh,
sit at games this year where the Diamondbacks came to town and I'd go, they haven't gotten it over anybody all series long.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's
It's like they have
insane.
three center fielders out there.
Yeah, Pete. If you want to see like athleticism, a good mix of athleticism, which Arizona has, and a good mix of just pure like offense, that's Texas. They manufacture their runs differently. They're built differently. One of the teams kind of like paid for a bunch of guys, and the other team developed and traded, and it's a cool matchup. I like the storyline. I hate the idea that people think it's going to be boring because I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, Friday night we'll get going on it. Do you want to make a prediction now that we have the matchup?
I think so. I'm going to say Texas in 6.
I had the same, so I'll go Texas in 5 just to be a little
Okay.
different. I do
Yeah.
think Texas pulls it out. I think they're a little bit deeper. Like you mentioned, their bullpen is a concern, um, but they're putting up runs just like like it's nothing. And I like we mentioned the lack of depth in the Arizona rotation. Their bullpen is nasty, but I think Texas is gonna just score enough to put it away and not have it go too deep.
Yeah, and if Kelly could give you, if you're Arizona, if Kelly could give you like five, two earned runs over 5 innings or something, then you're good. But Zach Gallen, like we need to see more from Zach Gallen. Like he's got to have two of those starts, like those starts, like the
Yeah,
the big game starts, and
maybe even three. He might need
maybe
to
even
have three
three,
of them.
maybe even three. I was listening to somebody where they were like, Jordan Montgomery's giving Bruce Bochy his best Madison Bumgarner impression, and I'm like, oh come on, like we're
Yeah.
still hearing that. And Bumgarner actually, did you see that note?
Yeah, yeah. He reached out to Boch to offer to pitch Game 7 for him.
That is the type of baseball journalism that needs to be uncovered in the postseason. So that's quite amazing. So I love that note. But a fun series, looking forward to it. And we'll definitely have some reaction when it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll wrap up the World Series, and then we'll be able to talk some postseason awards and whatnot too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And speaking of kind of like what's after the postseason, there will be some managerial hirings. There was one already. We touched on it in the last episode. We kind of talked about a lot of the openings, but there's one that's been filled, and it's gotten filled kind of in a unique way. The San Francisco Giants have hired former San Diego Padres manager Bob Melvin to be the 38th manager in franchise history. And this is something that, like, if you told me 10 years ago Bob Melvin's going to be the manager of the San Francisco Giants, I don't know if I would have been surprised, right? Because it just seems like
Yeah.
something that like makes sense, like could have happened a while ago and like is happening now. And I'm just, maybe how it happened is a bit surprising, but what were your thoughts about the hiring of Bob Melvin?
Yeah, I mean, the way it went down was kind of funny, especially with the Padres letting him talk to not just a team, but a division rival. That kind of just shows how the relationship with Preller had seemed to have soured there, and they were just like, "Yeah, well, you can go." And basically, at that point, like we had talked about a little earlier, once you let him talk to someone else, it's like, okay, you're going to be managing somewhere, but it probably won't be here anymore. But I like the hire for the Giants. They talked about wanting someone who was kind of well respected in the game and that players like playing for. And for the most part, it seems like players love playing for Bob Melvin. Eric Burns made a post after the hiring saying that the Giants got the best manager he's ever played for. Um, and hopefully that will they talked about someone who can be liked by players and be used as kind of a recruiter to help bring players in. And out of all the people available, there were a lot of good candidates, but not a lot had the pedigree or the experience of a Bob Melvin that I think would attract people to come in. And so hopefully that it can play out how the Giants ownership is hoping it will.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think Bob Melvin is a very good person for this job. Like he's gonna provide some stability, kind of like we mentioned with Dusty, how he did it in Houston, and he's gonna be a different voice, right? That was the point, is they needed a different voice in that clubhouse, and Bob Melvin could definitely provide that. And the connection is so strong. There's the Farhan connection, there's the Bay Area connection, there's the playing as a Giant in the '80s connection, and the Giants did a really good job rolling this thing out there with the public relations stint with Bob Melvin, kind of a flashback to Bob Melvin as a Giant, and kind of using that as a PR situation there. So I like them doing that. And for the San Diego thing, yeah, I agree. Like I thought 100% that if he was not going to take this Giants gig, because ultimately by the time the Giants interview him, it's his decision, then San Diego, there's no way he's going to come back after they let him interview. There's no way they're going to, like, he's just going to go back to San Diego like it's nothing. So I find that very intriguing. It's kind of like deja vu with the situation with Bochy with the year left on the contract. But I think a lot of people like this move. I think it appeases, like it pleases both kind of sides of the Giants fan base. The old school people kind of get an old school guy, and then the new school people get a guy who has been very much exposed to analytics and very much thinks that way. So he's like the perfect blend of both.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the hire a lot. I think he's a great fit. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what the coaching staff looks like and how he connects with the players. But it's a new
Yeah,
era of Giants baseball.
yes, it is. Yeah, it sounds like he's pretty open to keeping at least a good chunk of the existing staff there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how who he kind of moves and brings in to kind of fill it out. But I did think it was a little because didn't he also leave the A's with a year on his deal? The A's let him talk to the Padres, and
Yeah,
then he went, and then the Padres let him talk to the Giants. So, but also, I think we can't really talk about that without also mentioning that the Giants kind of snuck in there that they also extended Farhan Zaidi 2 more years through 2026 to match Melvin's expiration date, so to speak, on their contracts, which I'm sure will be a little more polarizing with Giants fans than the hiring of Melvin. Did you have any reaction to Farhan getting
yeah.
extended?
It yeah. It's shocking. It's shocking. Is it deserved? No, but at the same time, like I don't think I think Farhan Zaidi still has a lot of quality as an executive, and is it deserved? No. But at the same time, I feel like there's no issue with moving forward with him and giving him more time. And I know that he's had 5 years and yeah, it's just a tricky
I,
situation, but I don't think he
I
deserved
think
it.
part of it, yeah, I think part of it might have been Melvin probably doesn't want to come in for a year with a potential lame duck president of baseball ops, and then they leave after next year, and then he's got to change directions again. So I could see that of being part of it is like, Melvin's going to provide some consistency, but he also needs some consistency in who he's going to be working with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think just having um Farhan there long term, I think it's going to end up being a positive. And if it's not, then you could clip this off and make fun of me, ha ha ha. But yeah, I think it's going to end up being a positive for that reason that you just mentioned. I think it's a good point about how Melvin, maybe if there wasn't that assurance that Farhan was going to be there, maybe he takes a 1 year deal, maybe he doesn't. I think he said he would, but yeah, just kind of an interesting situation there. So, um, congrats to Bob Melvin, congrats to the Giants for hiring their new manager. Um, Craig Counsell is rumored to be interviewing or being allowed to interview. I guess his contract's going to be up anyways with the Brewers. So I don't know what the permission's like, but he's going to be interviewing with the Mets, according to some national reports. And we kind of hinted that David Stearns is there from Milwaukee, his Milwaukee
From the Brewer.
days. So maybe a
Yeah.
match made in heaven.
Yeah. And seems, just very similar to this Melvin situation where you're not going to let a guy go talk to another team if you're invested in keeping them. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Counsell takes that job partially for his relationship with Stearns and partially because he probably gets the feeling that the Brewers are ready for a change as well.
Yeah,
And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, managing the Mets I would feel, even though they underperformed this year, is probably a coveted job in Major League Baseball because you have a manager who will put the money out there to give you a roster to contend with year in and year out.
yeah, no, I agree. And Council's like a very highly regarded member. Hey Neil. Uh highly regarded member of analytics. He's into all of that stuff. So I think it would be a good fit and very highly regarded within the sport.
And almost every time we talk about him, I think of his batting stance too, just an all-time batting stance. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, of course.
I
Yeah, the
mean,
one
just an
where it's like kind of
all-timer.
like he holds the hands up very high. Yeah.
Yep.
So a fun
Yeah.
batting stance. That's a good tidbit. I forget that he played, but he also scored the winning runs, right? In two World Series.
Yep.
Is that ever gonna happen again? Like I doubt it.
Probably not. Yeah, I
That's
mean, pretty cool. It's awesome that like players. I mean, he had a solid career, but when you can like just that little tidbit, that he can say he scored the winning run not once but twice in the World Series is pretty awesome.
yeah, and
And one of those runs was the last time the Diamondbacks were in the World Series.
nice tie-in. Nice. Very beautiful time. And the other one before was Edgar Renteria. Um, Off Nagy's glove in the center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series. Bob Costas on the mound.
Yeah, and I believe that was a game 7 as well, right? So not just, I
Yep.
mean, we're talking walk off, walk off game 7 World Series wins, and he touched home plate twice to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
And the Athletic tweeted an article a few minutes ago, and the tweet says those close to Craig Counsell suggest that he holds a chance to raise the bar for manager salaries in the future. And that matters a lot to him. So New York could be the spot. More on the Mets receiving permission this week. So that's on theathletic.com. So interesting. I didn't even think about manager salaries. I don't think of that ever, but if he's
Yeah.
trailblazing that, good for him.
Yeah. I mean, sticking up for the homies. I'm sure the rest of the managers will appreciate that as well.
Yeah. I think Bochy's the highest paid guy.
Dusty's gonna come out of retirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once Dusty sees what Craig Counsell gets.
He's gonna come back for a few more years. Manage the White Sox.
Yeah.
La Russa joke. No.
But yeah, I think you said Boch. Boch is at what? I think he's at like 7 million a year or
6 or
something. I
7.
don't know.
Yeah.
They don't usually even release. They don't release a lot of figures. Like when a manager signs, you hardly see. You get the years, but you don't really see the salary.
What would be the low end? Because my mind is like 600, 700, 800 grand.
I feel like it's got to be at least 7. It got to be 7 figures now. It's probably around $1 million.
We'll find it after the show. We'll update. Yeah. Anyways, let's do the 3 up, 3 downs. Because we decided to change it, right? So we're gonna do downs first, just so we could end
start with the downs so we can end on a high.
Yeah, let's do it. First down, and it's the most disappointing thing in the postseason, and it is. I guess it doesn't matter now because, or maybe it would because you might have to serve whatever. We'll get into it. Game 5, there's an incident where Adolis Garcia hit a huge home run, and he did what Adolis Garcia does. It's part of his brand to kind of look at the home run and watch it, and it was an electrifying moment, and I had no problem with it. I think a lot of people had no problem with it. And later, Bryan Abreu ended up drilling Garcia in a 2-run game in the later innings, drilled Garcia and put him on base. And Garcia had words to say with the catcher, Martin Maldonado, and the benches ended up emptying. And there's a few ejections that happened. Abreu ended up getting ejected. Dusty got ejected because Abreu got ejected. The whole thing was a mess. There's fines given all over the place. And MLB goes ahead and slams down a 2-game suspension on Bryan Abreu. And my question is circumstance, okay? Tom Verducci said, and Tom Verducci is one of the best in the game, he noticed that it was the first time all season Bryan Abreu threw with a slide step, okay? That could throw someone off. It's a 2-run game and a big game. Who is looking to hit Adolis Garcia in that game and put base runners on? Like, to me, it's stupid. And another thing is stupid. I think Adolis Garcia, and again, I'm all for the antics, all for him. I think it's fun. It brings flavor to the game. But him turning and taking exception to it, that cemented the suspension. Because if he just went to first base, right, maybe glared at him and walked to first base, Abreu would not have even been thrown out of the game. But because Garcia took exception to it, and there was the benches cleared, and MLB realized that maybe Garcia prompted this whole thing, or Abreu prompted this whole thing, we're going to suspend him. That is not right. Like, there's a double standard here that's not met, and I don't know if he's going to serve it because the Astros ended up not moving on. Did he?
No, they are. They said that they already said that he was just going to serve it at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, that's the worst suspension I've ever seen in my life. Circumstance, have a feel for the game, have an understanding that, what a horrendous job by the umpiring crew. What a horrendous job by Michael Hill, who's one of the senior reps for baseball that's in charge of the umpires. He did an interview on Sirius XM. I was on my way home from something this weekend and I heard it. And his reasoning was horrendous. I mean, trying to blame everything on Abreu, and 2-game suspension. I mean, in the postseason,
Yeah.
and this has happened in the postseason before. Remember, Chase Utley got suspended and was able to serve it opening day the next year, and Yuli Gurriel had kind of a racist gesture towards Yu Darvish. He got suspended in the World Series. He got suspended but served it the next year. And
Well, they
like,
said all along, once the Astros appealed it, they said no matter what, even if the Astros won to go to the World Series, it was going to be next year. It was never going to be served in the
no, it was going to
postseason.
be served. I think it was going to be served in the postseason. Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay, I could be wrong. But either
I
way,
think
he should not have
initially
gotten
it
suspended.
initially it was unclear, but then like they appealed and everything, and they said at that point that it was going to be next season. That was before the Astros were eliminated.
Okay, yeah. So either way, like that's outside the
But
point.
yeah, you got to read the
Um,
timing. I think I wasn't able to watch it live, but I think Dusty got caught on a mic saying like, if we wanted to hit him, we'd hit him in spring training. Like we're not going to try to hit him now. And
yeah,
I think Dusty to kind of protest just like sat in the dugout for like 10 minutes, like he refused to leave the dugout, and they finally had to run over and like tell him to leave. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, not a great look for Major League Baseball. Surprise.
And if you're
Uh,
handing out suspensions, how do you not suspend Dusty for that? Like,
yeah,
Michael Hill went on radio and was like, "Yeah, Bryan Abreu throwing that pitch led to like a 10-minute delay on the game." It's like, well, if we want to talk about delays on the game, Dusty Baker was delaying the game too, and he got nothing. Like, again, I don't think Dusty should have been suspended, but just in the context of this, like,
yeah.
what are we doing? Like, I think that was rough, but we'll live. I guess it had no effect on the postseason. Um, anyhow, the other down real quick, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, who I usually enjoy, and that's a hot take, and
One
it's
of the
not
few.
one of the few, and not because I agree with him, but because I disagree with him, and I think he's fun to listen to. Okay, so I disagree with him. I can't state that enough. I disagree with him, but I like to listen to him. And he said that on a Sirius XM show that if the Diamondbacks won Game 6 and Game 7, he would retire on the spot. That's basically quote unquote. And the Diamondbacks won those games, and Russo did not retire. He was on First Take this morning. But still, he's
Did
definitely
they ask him
on.
about that? Did they ask him about his declaration of
They
retirement?
did, and he said, it was joking. It's for effect. It's for attention. It's what you do on radio and TV when you're in a
Yeah.
commentary role. But got to give him an L. The Diamondbacks used it, I believe, as a rallying cry in the post game celebration with the champagne. They were chanting "Mad Dog, Mad Dog," and Tori Lavella, who's friends with Mad Dog, was like, "Yeah, I'd like to see him retire." So, grab some pine, Mad Dog. Not a good situation for you.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he just said it for attention, and now he just, got to take the L on the shutdown inning, which has to be tough for him to do.
Yeah, he's gonna be very sad. Final thing here for my downs, and it's gonna be real quick, just because it's not a major pressing issue, but we talked a little bit about how bad the Texas bullpen is, and a big reason is Aroldis Chapman's got to get his stuff together. He is not a reliable. He's pretty much unusable at this point. He's got to get it going in the postseason, and Bruce Bochy's got to be able to use him in decent leverage spots again. So I'm down on him. He hit a guy with 104. He hit Chas McCormick with 104 on the hamstring, and it looked like the guy couldn't even walk to first.
Oh man, it looked
Guy.
like he was having like a full body spasm trying to stand up. I felt so bad for him.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that was
god.
rough. I mean, the
The
good news for oh, go ahead.
the limp to first was one of the most, like, I don't want to say it's not exaggerated, but one of the most like visually biggest limps I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Yeah, I
does
mean,
that make sense? Like, those
yeah,
steps were like, yeah,
104 to the hammy will do that to you, man.
yeah. I guess so. That's a weird analysis by me, but the limps. Uh,
The
but he was, yeah, he could barely walk, and it's, yeah, not a good situation. But Chapman's got to get his stuff together.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, what I was going to say was the good news for Chapman and the Rangers is he's got a few days to kind of have a bullpen here or there, and hopefully get it together for himself and for the Rangers. But
and for Chas McCormick, he's got the
I
whole
mean,
off season.
right? He's probably still icing it. But like we said, the Rangers bullpen has been their biggest question mark or their Achilles heel so far, and
Chapman's a big part of that. He's usually the 7th or 8th inning guy. So you need to be able to have some trust in those guys when you hand them the ball.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, let's hear your ups. Let's end on a positive note.
All right. So for ups, up number one, I'm going with the Arizona bullpen. We talked about the struggles that Gallen and Merrill Kelly had, and the Diamondbacks bullpen. Like we said, we watched a lot of Diamondbacks throughout the year because they play the Giants so often. I didn't realize how nasty this pen was until this postseason, especially those last 2 or 3 games. I guess not 3 because they lost game 5 like 10-0 or something. But throughout that Phillies series, they showed what they can do, and it was just goose egg after goose egg for the Phillies.
Yeah, their bullpen's good. Kevin Ginkel is the guy that's been going crazy coming off the mound. He's been excellent. And like you said, the Giants, so much of the analysis was get Gallen and Kelly out of the game. Once you get them out of the game, the Giants have hit the Diamondbacks bullpen before, and now maybe it's the opposite. They've been so good in getting outs this postseason. So I like that pick. Maybe Texas could turn it around with their bullpen. So it kind of ties in with the Chapman thing, but their bullpen's been nasty.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I thought was, I'm pretty sure it was Ginkel was getting interviewed after Game 7 on the field, but while they're setting up everything, and he was just like looking around, and he's just like, "I'm going to the World Series. I can't believe it. It doesn't feel real." And it's just really cool to see guys like come to that realization that they're going to the World Series.
Yeah.
So yeah, Arizona bullpen, snakes alive. The bullpen is up number one. Up number two, I'm going with road teams in the league championship series. I mean, in the ALCS, the road team won every game. I don't think that's ever happened before. Did you hear? Has that happened before that you're aware of?
I don't think so, but it's been that's been the stat that's been used.
Yeah, but then also I know it was the first time this happened that two teams were down 3-2, both going on the road for game 6 and 7, and the road team won all 4 of those games in 2 games in each series. I think it's cool to see. Usually home field means a lot, and I think it does to an extent, but I think it's kind of showing the competitiveness in baseball that these road teams are able to hold their own on the biggest stage in baseball.
Yeah, and somebody said, I think after the Astros got kicked out, was that like, did you see Houston's record all year on at home? Like it was like 40 and 45 at home. And
Oh
if the
wow.
Astros are going to get remembered in 2023, it's going to be because they played so bad at home. So, but yeah, that's a very wild opposite day type thing to happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and then to wrap it up and put a little nice black and orange bow on this thing, I'm going to go Kruk and Kipe number 3 for the third up, both nominated for the Ford C. Frick Award. Unfortunately, not as a joint nomination. So if they do get in, only one can, but they've each been nominated several times. It's always cool to see. They probably won't get in just because I feel like, because I think you can only vote for one guy, only one guy gets in. So it's kind of like splitting the vote when you have 2 guys in the MVP conversation. But always cool to see Kruk and Kipe at least get recognized. I know you mentioned some of the other names that are also, very commonly considered Hall of Famers as well. But yeah, Kruk and Kipe, any thoughts on them? I think they've in your lifetime, right, Steven?
Oh yeah, yeah. I go way back. Yeah, Kruk and Kipe, obviously they would receive my vote, 1 or 2, or either way, either combination, 1 or 2. One of them. Yeah, I could go either way. Could flip a hat if we need to, flip a coin if we need to.
Yeah.
They should go in together, and I think when one of them does get in, it will be kind of that joint thing in my mind, which would be very, very cool. But yeah, it's a loaded list, and we got to stop getting them on loaded lists. Like get them on a list with like a bunch of scrubs.
Well, that's why I was saying they need to do more than one Ford C. Frick Award a year. Like if you're it's almost like the players vote. If you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. Let them get in because we end up backlogging all these guys that should be in the Hall of Fame for announcing. Or I think Ford C. Frick is also journalism, right? Or is it just announcers?
It's just announcers. There's another journalism one.
That's right.
But like the list is amazing. Like Joe Buck, Hall of Famer, Joe Castiglione, Hall of Famer, Gary Cohen, probably a Hall of Famer, Tom Hamilton, Hall of Famer, Ken Korak, maybe soon Hall of Fame. Dan Shulman, definite Hall of Fame. Like these guys are all great announcers, and like it's a loaded list. But number 1 and number 2, however order you put them, Kruk and Kipe.
Yeah.
For
And this
me.
is their first time appearing together. So it's a little weird that they're both there
Yeah.
on the same list.
And Dave
But I remember
Fleming's
the
going to
last
be
time.
on there one day.
Yeah. I mean,
I
Giants fans,
100%, yeah.
I don't think a lot of Giants fans realize how spoiled we've been to basically have 4 Hall of Fame broadcasters for as long as we have. But yeah, I think the last time Kruk or Kuip, I think it was Kruk was nominated. Uh, Buster Olney had written an article saying just put them both in, put them in together, because no one just says I like Kruk or I like Kuip. It's Kruk and Kuip. They're a team, and so it's good to see them still get that recognition. Hopefully, one of them can take the next step on this voting. So, Kruk and Kuip, Fort C. Frick Award, third up, 3 up, 3 down.
Three
Bada
up,
babe.
3 up, 3 up. Yeah, his radios. Yeah, we should start doing that. Well, we shut it down again, Tyler. And this was an enjoyable one. Got a lot covered there about the postseason. I'm gonna try to get locked in on every pitch this World Series. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's always it's like bittersweet when we get to the World Series because it means we only have about 7 to 10 days left of baseball. But it's always fun to watch, and hopefully we have some memories. So 20 years from now, however we're digesting this date in history, we'll have some Rangers and Diamondbacks memories to look back on.
Yeah, we'll pull up the clips from this episode. All right, everybody out there could go ahead, follow the podcast on Twitter at shutdown_inning at Rizzo. And on YouTube, Spotify, go check us out. And thank you all for listening. More postseason stuff coming up. A World Series recap soon, postseason preview soon, or off-season preview soon. So many seasons, postseason, off-season.
We'll review all the seasons coming up.
Yeah. Spring season. No. Training, whatever. All right, coming up next, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
That's what's up.
Bye.